all who inhabit it. I'm Jake, I'm 15, and welcome to Orpheus Games. I love board games, and today I'm excited to review Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon, the objective, greatest board game of all time from Awakened Realms. I love this game so much, and I can't wait to get into it. One side note though, it's a campaign game and there's mysteries you're going to be exploring throughout that I would hate to spoil. So for a lot of the b-roll throughout the video, it will be just the very start of the game or from the very helpful album from the Kickstarter, which is like an art book, sort of. So I won't be spoiling much throughout the campaign, you'll just be seeing pieces from here. And without further ado, I would just also ask if you have any suggestions to just comment them down below, because for example, I got a comment on my last video asking to do a review of Tainted Grail, so that's why I decided to do this one, and if you subscribe, it would make me happy. So first off, we're going to start with an overview of the game, then we're going to move into its appearance, focusing on artwork, components, and theme. Then we're going to look at its design with complexity mechanics and its innovation, then the practicality of the game, discussing its price and storage, and our final thoughts with you'll like this game if, you'll dislike it if, and our alternative recommendations. So first off, what is Tainted Grail? Tainted Grail is a dark Arthurian campaign game where 1 to 4 players, I played my campaign solo, will be exploring this vast world and taking different actions, exploring, moving around, activating menhirs, and mostly uncovering and discovering this story that spreads across this entire realm. You really feel the vastness, and you'll be using different cubes, which are different resources for different actions, and drawing specific cards, or passing specific tests, and doing those to explore the story and reach end goals in each chapter and objectives you have. I really want to spoil as little as possible because this was such a fascinating and phenomenal experience that I would not want to spoil for anyone else. So first off, the appearance of the game. So first off, we have the artwork, and as you can tell, it's very dark, and there's lots of color in it, but it's very muted, it's very toned down, but it's very pretty. It's like very watercolor-esque, sort of like slightly less than the Great Wall that Awakened Realms has also done, but I think it's very pretty. It's very different from a lot of what they've done, and you'll be seeing coming b-roll of that now, but like the illustrated style, but also like the painting and the limited color palette in some pictures for like the enemies, but also the vast color palette for the world is just beautiful. I really adore the artwork for the game, and I think it really sets it apart from a lot of other games, which are a lot of the aspects of this Tainted Grail, which we'll get into. I really enjoy the artwork, and I like the different colors that they choose and the different artistic styles with like the painting-esque of the illustrations across the locations. It's very clear to see what's what, but it's also interesting the different changes and the different areas look very distinct. Moving on to the components for the game. So this game's pretty amazing. In the base game for this, there's 4 miniatures for the main characters and then 3 giant miniatures for the menhirs. The menhirs are sort of like the lights of the world, which prevent the weirdness and keep it at bay, but we'll get that into a bit when we talk about the mechanics or the theme. So I really enjoy, and I got this sun drop, so it's like, but you can easily do it at home. It's just like a wash, like Agrax Earth Shade and some dry brushing. I'm sure you can do, and there's lots of files on Board Game Geek on how to do that. But I really like the miniatures. They're very cool, and they have some base decoration in too, which is good for Awakened Realms. There's a ton of cards in these games, and all of them have very unique art, which I think are super cool. There's like big decks you'll be forming for each of the characters for their combat actions and their diplomatic when you have combat or encounters, and all of them have really unique artwork, and it's really cool. It doesn't distract from like the rest of the background, but I do enjoy the artwork on those, and they're nice quality too. In addition to these large tarot-sized cards you'll be making for the map and spreading out, they're really nice and they're easy to flip over and feel, and they seem good. They're not linen exactly, but I still really think they're cool. Other components for the game, there's also these tiles that you're going to be having out, these little skull tokens, which you're going to be putting out and then turning them. They have numbers along the edges to find different secrets, which I think is a really cool idea, but they're also really nice to handle. They're also plastic and stuff. There's lots of cubes you'll be putting out to different actions, and it's all really nice and plastic and really good. I do enjoy the components for the game, but none of it's too over the top that it detracts from the experience, except for part of the storage, but we'll get to that later. Moving on to the theme. So in the theme, you start out in just this small town, Kukathon, I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but you're one of these 4 people. I played through the campaign as Ele, and you're going to be leaving your town to set out to try to relight your town's menhir so it doesn't get lost to the weirdness. There's this weirdness which comes through the lands, and it's sent by the evil people which you'll find out more about them. I don't want to spoil anything. But in ancient times, mysterious people built up these menhirs, which put the weirdness at bay and like causes safe areas to live in. But if the menhirs go out, then the weirdness creeps back in. So you're going to be moving around, lighting these menhirs, which are these really cool minis, and it also prevents there from being like just one giant map, because once you leave an area for too long, the menhir there will go out, since you can only go within 1 or 2 spaces of the menhir, which helps it also stay concise and focused in your view rather than being like, oh, we have to go all the way over there, and it helps it really feel like a world where like it's a journey to get all the way from one point to another. It just felt so fascinating. This is just one of the most important parts of a campaign game, and it was just so different than anything I thought, with plagues and witches and magic, but different than anything else, and a story you feel like you're familiar with, but just such a different way, and it's just so beautiful, and one of the most driving points of Tainted Grail. It's one of the only campaign games I've completed, and it's just phenomenal in its storytelling. The story is the game. There's nothing else from that, but there's also strong enough mechanics so you're not distracted by the story too much and don't care about the game. There were some points where I didn't play the game exactly perfectly, but just the story was so amazing, and I really felt connected to my character and the characters around that I was discovering in the world, and I was helping them with the doing. It never felt like I was just doing a side quest for a reward or something. I really felt like I was helping people and moving throughout the world, and in the end, I made such a difficult choice. And I really felt like it was a journey and it was a difficult decision lots of times that I was making. And in the end, it was so difficult and such a profound decision. I really felt that was the right one, but I'm not sure if it was for the effects of the world. So that's another cool thing. In the stretch goals, there's 2 other campaigns, and they're coming out with an expansion where your choices will affect the world that comes into play in the future and in the past, which I'm really excited to dive into at one point. But I don't know if I have the time. So that was the appearance of the game. Super amazing, phenomenal, as typical for Awakened Realms. Moving on to the design. So first up, the complexity. Tainted Grail is not that difficult. There's some unique things, but most of the stuff, like if it tells you to like lose 2 food, or you gain food from this, or different actions on cards, you sort of get to understand it. The only thing that you have to like sort of wrap your head around is the combat and diplomacy systems, where you have cards and you'll be playing them to match symbols on one side to another, but you can only match symbols if you have like a skill of that type. Like let's say, for example, you need one, oh, I forgot all of them, like one wisdom, I believe, or empathy to connect a key, and then if you do, you'll get like 1 damage on the enemy, or 1 point in the diplomatic encounter or something, which I think is really cool, since you have some actions that are specific for diplomatic encounters and some for attacking encounters. So Ele, who I played as, was more like diplomatic focused, but I was able to shape her and tune her abilities and collect different cards that I thought would help in most of the encounters. And the difficulty still got up though, so I felt like I was still having a challenge throughout, but I really did enjoy the combat and diplomacy mechanisms, where it stayed interesting throughout the whole game, and I didn't get that bored of it. However, sometimes it got a little too challenging and I would forget some of the rules, like the hand limit or whatever, just because I was more interested in diving into the story. There's also these enemies which are on cards, which you'll be moving around the map, which are kind of a little weird, since like they're cards on top of cards, so you can only really see them if you're looking from like above or from the top down, but it was still easy to pick them out. They had miniatures you could get for all the enemies to move around, but they don't stay around that long, so I'm not sure if I would recommend them, especially since just the base box is so much to delve into, and Kickstarter exclusive as it is, you're probably paying a lot for it already. That was the complexity for the game. Not too difficult. It's more story driven than anything, and it makes sense after a session or 2. It's very easy to get into. That also was part of the mechanics I was explaining, but one cool thing is if you explore a location, you flip it over and you read like a paragraph on the card, but then you'll go into this giant book of secrets, which I'll be showing now. It has all these cool things you'll be diving into, and pages on pages of lore and different information for all these different locations that you could go to, like hundreds of them, not hundreds, maybe 100 of them, 105, maybe I think it is the total. And then some extras I won't say anything about. But it'll have different choices you make, and you'll be jumping around the page, and then sometimes you'll go to the very back, and the Book of Secrets is called at the very end of the book, which has specific passages or things that change with specific actions. And sometimes, and you'll also have this sheet, which sometimes it'll be like, check off Mark of the Hunter or something. I'm just making something up. And then later it'll be like, if you have the Mark of the Hunter, do this. If you don't, do that. And you can really tell your actions and what their effects are on the world around you, but none of it is spoiled from the page. It's not like, I slayed a giant cow and then you knew there was a giant cow or something. I'm just making this up. It's obviously not actually in the game. it doesn't spoil anything, but the names still remind you, and you can feel the memories and the effects of your actions on the world, which I think is really great. Innovation. So this is sort of a weird one. More also, I've described it as like, what does this game do differently and why should you choose this one? I think Tainted Grail offers like some of the best story that I've ever had in any game and made me enthralled enough to finish an entire, I think it was like 40 hours to complete the campaign, but it depends on the person. Every day I would be so excited to jump back into it and re-explore. I left it set up on a table and I was so excited to dive into it again and again and again. And I think it really offers such a compelling story and in such a unique setting. It's not just like sci-fi or fantasy or whatever directly. It's different than that. And it's something that I think everyone should have a chance to explore and discover. As hard as it is to access, though, I completely understand why it hasn't gotten the recognition or #1 spot on Board Game Geek it deserves, because obviously, in my factual opinion, it is the best one ever. Game, that is. Moving on to the practicality, so the price of it. I've sort of touched on this, but it fluctuates a lot. It can be very expensive to get this game, but if you're checking eBay or your local stores or something, it shouldn't be that bad. I don't remember what I paid for this since it was given to me as a birthday gift last year, but I think it's definitely worth it for all the time I put into it. And it's a campaign game, so you could even replay it if you wanted to, which I think is incredible. I don't know if I would, since I want to get into the other campaigns first to see what my effects are on their actions, but I think I could sometime in the future. You definitely get a bang for your buck for what you're paying, and I think it's totally worth it since you're going to be playing it numerous times, if you're playing it right, that is. But definitely don't buy it for one of those people who's going to buy a campaign game and then not actually play it, or just play it once or twice. You really need to dive deeply into it. But we'll get to that in a second with you'll not like this if in your final thoughts. But for storage for the game, this is a bit of a problem. So I just left it set out so it didn't have much of the problems, but there's no dividers or anything for the cards for most of them. So you have this big long row in the box that runs like all the way down the side, and then you're just putting everyone's cards in there. And for a bigger group, or if you don't have a dedicated space, you can leave it set up. That can be a big problem. The insert's not the greatest, and I wish they could improve on that, especially since the minis snap in, and sometimes I feel like I'm going to break some of them. I haven't, but that's only for the character minis, not the actual min pairs. And then there's like these wells where you're supposed to put different cards and things, but it never tells you what. The storage isn't great, but it's a lot better than nothing, or the folded space 1 insert. You can look that up if you're interested. That's my favorite insert ever. But I really do like the storage. It does its job. I don't really like it. It does its job. It has its purpose. It's nothing great. It's nothing terrible either. It's just fine, which I wish could be better, especially from Awakened Realms. Now, my final thoughts. So you'll like this if you're looking for a twist on the genre or a good campaign game that tells such a unique and phenomenal story you'd love to dive into. If you're a solo player, or maybe 2 people looking to explore this story, but I think it works best at solo, but I've only played it as solo. You might have a group that works great at like 3 or 4 or something, but I think 1 or 2 is the sweet spot for most campaign games, including this. If you're looking for some unique combat and diplomacy, a real chance to connect with an actual character in a board game and feel for them. Oh, I have so many memories of Ayla in my campaign and the decisions we made. I say we, like she's a real person, but I feel that way from the game, which is just so incredible and shows you what the game does right. You'll dislike this, though, if you don't have a lot of time or a lot of space to explore this. If you're with different game groups or game groups that aren't looking for a big story or alpha gamery type of people, that's why I played it solo. I had all the time I needed during COVID, and it was great to explore it. It has some unique mechanics. I appreciate all the mechanics that are in it, but if you're not a huge fan, if you really want a mechanics-focused game and you're not wanting something that has more standard like lose resources, gain resources, which isn't the whole game, but that's part of it, or if you have a real problem where you're going to need to unpack it and repack it every game, that doesn't work great, especially with the storage, unless you can find an unofficial solution or make your own. I haven't seen anything out there, though, that would help it. So, alternative recommendations. If you're looking for story more than mechanics, I would recommend Etherfields, also from Awakened Realms. It's a fantastic game, and I've only started to dive into it. It's really interesting and has this cool dream-like experience where you're stuck in a dream. Or if you prefer sci-fi more, I would recommend ISS Vanguard, coming out from Awakened Realms, which I also backed and I'm super excited about, where you're on a ship exploring different planets. And I'm not going to spoil it since I also don't know that much, but it seems really cool. If you're looking for much more mechanics than story, then you could check out Gloomhaven, the #1 on Board Game Geek. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a bit underground. Some people have mentioned it a few times, although I didn't personally really like that when I tried Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. So that was Tainted Grail. And now finally for my rating. So I've started to do 1 to 5 stars for games that I think, where 1 stars are pretty bad games that I don't really enjoy that much and I would not like to have in my collection. 2 stars are I don't really enjoy and I'm only keeping it for a specific person or reason. 3 stars are games that I pretty much enjoy and will sometimes play off and on, not sure how I feel about it. 4 games are really good games that I really like and think everyone should have the opportunity to try, like the Silver Lyre for Orpheus games, as in Orpheus is a liar. And 5 stars are the absolute best of the best games ever. And this game absolutely deserves 5 out of 5 stars. The best game. I don't know if I would ever get rid of it. It's such a phenomenal story, and I can't wait for the stretch goals to explore them. I really feel and understand the characters. It's just such an enthralling and unique experience that I really love. Definitely one of the best games ever, and I can't wait to explore more of what Awakened Realms has to offer. Thank you for watching. This was Orpheus Games, and if you subscribe, it would make me happy, so thank you so much if you do that. And if you have any suggestions, you can leave any comments down below. Also, check out my Batman Gotham City Chronicles and the Great Wall reviews, which might be linked somewhere around here. If not, that's okay. You can just see from clicking on my channel. And that's all. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.